What's your favorite warm-up etude? And you shrug your shoulders and says, well, I don't know that I have one. May I suggest that every one of your students should have a favorite warm-up etude, something that they can play most likely from memory because it's been on their assignment for a long time, but something that has some musicality to it, that's fun to play, and that really, really does work their fingers, challenge their fingers. Etudes have different purposes, so it may be a chord etude, it could be a scale etude, but something that really works. I will confess to you that virtually all of my students play solfeggietto. I don't apologize one bit for that. I think that's so good for them. I think C.P.E. Bach would be so proud of us to know that we are still playing his piece. I think C.P.E. Bach intended for this piece to be an etude. I think he wants it really, really fast, you know. I tell my students that they have to have at least 4 different ways to practice 16th notes in general, but solfeggietto in particular. But everybody, in my home studio, I've got a bunch of boys who are about the same age, and they vie to see which of them can play the solfeggietto the fastest. And we put the metronome on, and they are really, really sailing away. Well, mission accomplished. Their fingers are really moving. They love the piece, they think it's fun, and they think it's really quite thrilling to play that really, really fast. I might share with you some of the ways in which they practice that, but there's no particular secret in that. It's just that my students get the idea that if they only have one way to practice a passage, it's not good enough. I tell my students, minimum of 4 different ways. So with solfeggietto, they practice pushing in on every note, push, 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 getting weight into the key. So there's arm involvement in that. Just the opposite of that, they all practice staccato, and staccato is plucking the fingers, scratching the fingers. Pull in. They jazz it up and play. They play to the beat. And they think of different ways that they can practice in addition to that. Those are our 4 basic ways to practice 16th notes. So that's really important. A lot of my students have the Caballets etude in A minor. Great, great right-hand finger etude. And boy, we talked earlier in our discussions about out around. That's a wonderful place to illustrate out around. Okay, that's great. Bergman. Those are all great etudes, and they're good pieces. And there's no reason why a student should not have 2 or 3 in their ongoing assignment that they can memorize, sit down, and have fun with it. Playing solfeggietto is a lot more fun than playing a C minor scale in 3 different forms, you know. It's real music. And yet the fingers are getting such good exercise out of that. So may I urge you, please, to put an etude, get it memorized, and have that as an ongoing part of a student's assignment. An etude is part of their regular warm-up.